The cold, metallic walls of the alien tribunal chamber hummed with a low, unrelenting buzz. The atmosphere was sterile and suffocating, an unnatural calm hanging in the air as 100 alien eyes stared down at the solitary human, bound by thick mechanical restraints. The girl hung in the center of the room. Her back was to the crowd, her face impassive, a silent monument to the pain and suffering she had endured. Her clothes, now torn and bloodied, barely clung to her frame. The flickering light above cast eerie shadows across her form, the only movement coming from the slight rise and fall of her chest, an indication that, against all expectations, she was still alive. The Tribunal, an assembly of different species, each with their own form of judgment, sat in a circle below her. They whispered amongst themselves in a cacophony of guttural voices, alien languages incomprehensible to human ears. But their words were not for her. They had already decided her fate. She was merely a tool for their amusement now, a representation of their superiority. They had captured her during the failed raid. A human, one of the few who had dared challenge their rule. In their eyes, she was nothing more than a specimen to study, a creature to be broken. Their leader, a towering insectoid creature, raised a clawed hand, silencing the murmurs. The entire room quieted instantly, the tension in the air palpable. He stood and addressed the assembly in his rasping tongue, his voice carrying an air of finality. "This is humanity," he began, his voice cold, dripping with disdain. "A weak species, full of noise and pride, but beneath the surface, fragile. Let us see just how much it can endure before it snaps." At his command, 2 other aliens approached the girl. They were neither swift nor gentle. Their movements were mechanical, practiced, a form of cruel choreography. The restraints holding her suspended were disengaged, and she fell to her knees with a sharp gasp. Her skin was pale, slick with sweat and blood, but there was no scream, no cry of agony. She remained silent, her breathing shallow, her gaze fixed on the floor before her. To the aliens, it was proof of their superiority. She had been broken, her spirit crushed. Yet there was something unnerving about her silence. The girl had not begged for mercy, had not pleaded. The fact that she remained conscious, that she showed no signs of fear, unsettled them. This human was not like the others they had tortured before. One of the captors, a reptilian species, stepped forward, grinning wickedly. He pulled a device from his belt, a small orb-like instrument, and held it before her face. The device hummed, releasing a high-pitched sound that vibrated through her skull. It was a sonic torturer, designed to target and distort the pain centers in the brain. The girl's body jerked, a violent shudder racing through her, but her lips remained sealed, her eyes unwavering. They took turns with her, experimenting with different forms of agony, cutting, burning, freezing. With each attack, the girl's body betrayed her, her muscles twitching, blood flowing from open wounds, her skin bruising and tearing. Still, she did not scream. Her body, broken and battered, struggled to maintain consciousness, but her mind refused to give in. The pain was unbearable. Yet she clung to something, the fleeting thought of escape, of retribution. There was no surrender. The aliens grew more frustrated with each passing moment. Their experiments, their methods, were supposed to be foolproof. But this human, this girl, defied them. One of the alien judges leaned forward, his large, round eyes narrowing. "Why does she not break?" he asked in an annoyed tone. "Why does she not scream? Does she not feel the agony we inflict?" The insectoid leader remained silent, observing her with a calculating gaze. He had been watching her since the beginning, studying her reactions or lack thereof. He could feel the strange unease in the air, the instinctive dissonance that told him this was no ordinary human. She had been chosen for her strength. But even now, he could not understand why she refused to yield. Another experiment was ordered. They attached her to a machine designed to amplify pain, its electrodes connecting to her nervous system, sending shocks that coursed through her body, attacking her organs. The girl's body convulsed violently, yet her face remained stoic, unmoved by the agony. They continued their torture, pushing her to the brink of collapse. Minutes passed. The tribunal watched in silence, each alien judging her in their way. To them, This was a display of dominance, proof that they were untouchable. They were superior, and this girl, this pathetic human, would be no different from all the others who had dared to challenge their authority. They had broken others, and they would break her too. But the girl had other plans. Even as her body began to shut down, as the pain reached unimaginable levels, her thoughts remained clear. A part of her wondered how long it would take for them to realize that she had not been truly broken, that her defiance was not the product of stubbornness, but of something far deeper, a will, a drive that had been forged over years of war and survival, something the aliens could never comprehend. Her vision blurred, her heart struggling to pump, but still, she held on to that one thought: I will survive. They did not understand humans. They could not. She was more than just flesh and bone, more than pain and suffering. She was humanity, and humanity never gave up. Not until the very end. The alien leader signaled for the next phase. A countdown began, and the machine's final burst of energy sent a wave of destruction through her body. The girl's heart stopped beating, her breath stilled, and her limp body hung like a broken marionette. To the aliens, she was dead. They had won. They had broken her, as they had broken so many before her. But in that silence, there was something else, a spark. Something flickered inside the girl's chest, beneath the bloodied surface of her skin, something that refused to stay buried. The tribunal moved on, confident in their victory, their arrogance blinding them to what had just happened, for they had no idea. Humanity was not done, not by a long shot. Darkness, cold, weightless emptiness wrapped around her like a burial shroud. There was no sound, no movement, just a distant echo of something calling her back. A slow, shuddering breath. Then another. Her body twitched, the smallest flicker of movement in the absolute stillness. A nerve fired, a muscle contracted. Fingers curled, nails dragging against the cold metal beneath her. Then pain, sharp, electric, racing through her nerves like wildfire. Every cell in her body screamed in protest. She was supposed to be dead. She had felt the moment life had slipped away, the sharp snap of consciousness breaking apart. Yet something inside her refused to stay buried. Her lungs spasmed, forcing in a breath. The first thing she registered was the cold floor beneath her cheek, slick with dried blood. Her own. The second was the rhythmic hum of the alien containment cell. The tribunal had discarded her here like trash, a corpse of no further use to them. But she wasn't dead. Not anymore. Her body twitched again, this time with purpose. Muscles contracted, repairing themselves at an impossible rate. She clenched her jaw as sensation returned, nerves reactivating like a system rebooting from shutdown. A deep ache filled her bones, but there was something else, something new. She could feel it. It wasn't healing, not in the way humans understood it. This was something deeper, something written into her very DNA. A dormant response buried within her biology, now violently awoken. Her fingers pressed against the metal floor, nails digging in as her body recalibrated. The pain was fading, not naturally, but as if her nervous system had adapted, learned from the suffering. She sat up slowly, muscles rippling beneath bruised skin. Every inch of her should have been screaming in agony. Yet there was only awareness, a heightened sense of self, of her surroundings. The door to the containment cell remained shut, locked with advanced security mechanisms. A standard prisoner wouldn't be able to escape, but she was no longer standard. She took a slow, controlled breath, listening. The alien ship's structure vibrated at a near imperceptible frequency. She could feel the movement of guards beyond the door, hear the distant clicks of an insectoid's exoskeleton against the floor. Every sound, every vibration, mapped itself inside her mind as if she had always possessed this ability. Something had changed. Footsteps. A single guard. Heavy, careless. He wasn't expecting resistance. The tribunal had deemed her dead. There was no need for caution. A fatal mistake. The door slid open with a hiss, the bright hallway lights illuminating her unmoving form. The guard stepped in, glancing at the lifeless body crumpled on the floor. He hesitated, perhaps sensing something was wrong. Too late. She moved before he could react, her body a blur of motion. His throat collapsed under the force of her strike, a sickening crunch echoing in the cell. He didn't even have time to scream. His body hit the floor, convulsing. She knelt, hands moving instinctively, stripping him of his weapon, his security device. The moment her fingers brushed the alien tech, something ignited in her mind. A flood of information, an understanding that shouldn't have been possible. She could read it. She could feel how it worked, how it connected to the ship's network. Her brain adapted, absorbing the knowledge like second nature. This wasn't human. This wasn't normal. She flexed her fingers, staring at her own hands as the realization settled. She wasn't just healing. She was evolving. The Tribunal had tortured her, broken her body down to its limits. And in doing so, they had awakened something they couldn't comprehend. Her lips curled into a slow, cold smile. They had no idea what they had just created. Weapon in hand, she stepped over the lifeless body and slipped into the hallway. The ship pulsed around her, its systems oblivious to the predator now stalking its corridors. She moved in silence, her body adapting to the environment with unnatural precision. Her mind worked quickly, processing every detail. She was still deep inside the Tribunal's warship, and escape was not an option. Not yet. She needed to gather intel, understand the layout, learn who was in command, and then she would burn it all to the ground. She moved like a shadow, slipping past security checkpoints, weaving through maintenance corridors. The stolen device in her hand pulsed with energy, and with a single thought, she accessed it. The alien language translated itself in her mind as if it had always been there, guiding her through encrypted files and system controls. Every step she took, every movement, felt right. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming something else. A voice echoed down the corridor. 2 guards approaching, their conversation low, distracted. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath steady, controlled. As they passed, she moved. 2 precise strikes, a snap of bone, a twist of the knife. Their bodies slumped to the floor before they even knew they were dead. She didn't hesitate. She searched them for anything useful, taking their weapons, their access chips. Information flooded her mind as she studied their gear, the ship's layout becoming clearer with each stolen piece of knowledge. She was learning, faster than she should. It was no longer just about escape. This ship was a symbol of their power, of the arrogance that led them to believe humanity was weak. She would show them how wrong they were. Stepping over the corpses, she moved deeper into the warship, her pulse steady, her purpose clear. The Tribunal thought they had passed judgment on her species. Now it was her turn. Alarms blared through the corridors, the sound rippling outward like a living thing, awakening the ship's defenses. They had discovered the bodies. It didn't matter. She was already gone, slipping between security patrols with an ease that defied logic. Every movement felt precise, every breath measured. Her body no longer ached, no longer suffered under the weight of injury. It had adapted, strengthened, becoming something beyond human limitations. The Tribunal had shattered her body, but they had failed to break her will, and in doing so, they had created something else entirely. She could feel the warship around her, as if its structure had become an extension of her senses. The low hum of its power core thrummed beneath her skin, guiding her through its twisting passages. The stolen alien device in her hand pulsed again, and she absorbed another stream of information. A map, a list of critical systems, security protocols. Their mistakes were piling up. She moved toward the central control chamber, the heart of the ship. If she wanted to cripple them, this was a place to do it. The guards had thickened now, reacting to the threat she posed, their movements tighter, more coordinated. It wouldn't be enough. 2 patrolled ahead, their weapons drawn, scanning for any sign of her presence. They were careful, disciplined, but she was faster, deadlier, a flicker of motion, a flash of steel. One fell without a sound, his throat open before his brain even registered the attack. The second barely had time to turn before her hand drove into his chest, his body convulsing as she ripped the weapon from his grasp and ended him in one smooth motion. Blood pooled at her feet, but she was already moving. She was close now. The control chamber lay ahead, its reinforced doors sealed tight. Layers of encryption guarded it. Security measures that would have taken even the most skilled human hacker hours to break. She didn't need hours. Her fingers brushed against the stolen access chip, and she felt it. The raw data, the complex language of the technology unraveling in her mind. She understood it now, as if she had always known. It wasn't just intelligence. It was instinct. The doors hissed open. Inside, the tribunal leaders turned, their expressions shifting from arrogance to something they had never expected to feel, fear. She stepped inside, slow, deliberate, her body a perfect weapon honed by their own cruelty. The insectoid leader who had overseen her torture stood at the center, his many eyes narrowing. "This is impossible," he rasped. She didn't answer. He gestured, and the guards moved. Weapons were drawn, energy blades ignited. She met them head-on. The first died before his weapon could even fire, her movements faster than their minds could process. She wove through them, a storm of violence, her strikes surgical, final. Their armor did nothing to stop her. Their training meant nothing. One by one, they fell. The tribunal leader stumbled back, his mandibles clicking in panic. "You don't understand what you are," he hissed. "What you become." She tilted her head, the faintest hint of amusement in her eyes. "I understand perfectly." She lunged. His claws slashed toward her, but she was already inside his guard, her blade flashing upward. The impact sent him crashing against the control panel, his body convulsing as his own security systems turned against him. He choked out something in his alien tongue, a desperate plea, but she was already moving past him. The control console waited. Her fingers danced over the interface, a language that should have been foreign now as familiar as her own. She bypassed security, silenced the alarms, and rewrote the ship's commands with terrifying ease. The warship's core pulsed in response. A countdown began. She turned, stepping over the broken bodies, her expression unreadable. The tribunal had thought themselves gods, untouchable in their superiority. Now they were nothing more than the architects of their own downfall. The ship trembled beneath her feet as she walked away, flames beginning to lick through the corridors. The tribunal's reign had ended, and humanity's vengeance had only just begun. The ship was dying. She felt in the vibrations beneath her feet, the slow unraveling of its systems. Fires raged in the lower decks, consuming everything in their path. Emergency sirens blared, but there was no saving it now. The warship, the tribunal symbol of power, would never leave this place intact. But she wasn't done yet. She moved through the chaos like a phantom, untouched by the panic around her. The few remaining guards, those foolish enough to stand in her way, fell before they could even raise their weapons. The alien bodies littering the corridors were proof of the tribunal's failure, proof that their judgment had been nothing more than arrogance wrapped in ceremony. She reached the docking bay, the last barrier between her and escape. Several ships remained, their sleek forms lined up in perfect order. She scanned them quickly, her mind working with an efficiency that would have once been impossible. She didn't just understand their technology now. She was it. Her body had adapted. Her mind expanded beyond human limits. But something was wrong. The moment she stepped toward the closest ship, a presence rippled through her senses. It wasn't just another guard. It was something else. Something waiting. She turned slowly. The tribunal leader stood at the far end of the hangar, his exoskeleton cracked, his movement slow but steady. He should have been dead. No living creature could have survived what she had done to him. But like her, he had refused to die. A thin, twisted smile formed on his mandibles. "I see it now," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "You are not a mistake. You are the inevitable." He stepped forward, each movement deliberate, the weight of understanding settling over him. "We have seen your kind before," he continued, "in the ruins of conquered worlds, in the whispers of those who came before us." He exhaled, something close to reverence in his tone. "We thought we understood humanity. We believed you'd be fragile, temporary." His black eyes gleamed. "We were wrong." She said nothing. There was nothing to say. The tribunal leader straightened, his injuries forgotten. Whatever fear had once gripped him was gone now, replaced by something colder. You are the future of your species, he said, and the end of ours. She moved before he could say anything else. The fight was brutal, efficient. He was strong, stronger than he had any right to be, but she was faster. His claws slashed through the air where she had been a second earlier, his movements desperate yet precise. He fought like a creature who had just realized the truth too late. She ended it with a single strike. The tribunal leader collapsed, his breath shuddering. He tried to speak, but no words came. His body twitched once, then fell still. She stood over him, her expression unreadable. He had understood in the end. It hadn't saved him. The ship's structure groaned, metal screaming as explosions tore through the decks below. Time was running out. She turned, boarding the nearest vessel, without hesitation. The controls responded to her touch instantly, the alien language bending to her will. The hangar bay doors opened, the cold void of space stretching before her. As she guided the ship forward, she cast one last glance at the dying warship. Flames engulfed it, the Tribunal's legacy crumbling into nothing. They had tried to break her. They had only made her stronger. And now, the universe would know what humanity was truly capable of.